Well, I mentioned how the books that I've written have been on classical themes. And this was a reflection of the fact that as a child, these were my obsessions. I loved the Greeks, I loved the Romans. And although I read the Bible with great passion as well, I loved anything that was kind of ancient. I found that emotionally, and I'm appalled to say this, I was very much on the side of the kind of ancient superpowers. So I was very much with, pro Pharaoh, pro Nebuchadnezzar, pro Pontius Pilate. And if you'd asked me where do my values come from, my ethics and so on, I would have said Greece and Rome. The experience of writing about, say, Caesar, who when he conquered Gaul, slaughtered 1 million Gauls, it said, enslaved another 1 million, and everyone in Rome went, hurrah for that. That's great, fabulous. Or Sparta, Leonidas, the king who died at Thermopylae, hero of 300 if you've seen the film. The entire Spartan state was founded on the systematic exploitation of a conquered neighboring city, and actually provided the inspiration for what the Nazis did in occupied Eastern Europe. I began to question the degree to which actually these were, kind of morally speaking, ethically speaking, my ancestors, my progenitors. But it was more than that. It was also the experience of trying to write about these ancient peoples in English, a language that I began to realize was inadequate to express all kinds of concepts and casts of mind that the Greeks and the Romans had had. When I kind of analyzed this more closely, I realized that again and again, the issue was basically Christianity, that Christianity had so kind of saturated the meaning of words in English that it was incredibly difficult often to use them and get back to a pre-Christian world. And so I became increasingly kind of interested in the degree to which things that I had rather taken for granted, things that I had assumed were essentially human nature or just the way that societies organize themselves, that actually they weren't at all, that they were culturally contingent, and the culture that they derived from was Christianity. And so I wrote Dominion essentially to explore that thesis, essentially to stress test it, to see whether this kind of feeling I increasingly had that so much that people in the West, and particularly perhaps those who would count themselves as agnostic or indeed positively hostile to religion and perhaps Christianity in particular, that actually even being opposed to Christianity has Christian roots. I mean, these were the suspicions that I was coming to. And so I wrote Dominion basically to see whether those hunches were correct, whether that thesis could be elaborated, and whether the threads that I increasingly felt could be traced from antiquity right the way into the present, whether that was actually possible. And I'm delighted to report that I've discovered that you could. So otherwise I wouldn't have written the book.